Welcome to Buying and Beyond, the buying podcast that aims to entertain and inspire. We're Kate and Linz, and together we have over 30 years' experience in retail, including Accessorise and M&S to name a few high street names.
We've been through the highs and the lows, the ups and the downs of fashion retail buying and beyond, and we really want to share this with you.
This is a safe space for us to share our stories, tips and advice, and we have some friends joining us along the way to give us their thoughts and opinions too.
We hope this podcast will help anyone looking to get into the industry, as well as those already enjoying the wild world of retail buying, as many of these stories will hopefully feel very relatable. So grab your drink of choice, sit back and have a giggle with us.
Hello,
Hi.
back for episode 3.
Ep 3.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling like I keep saying ep a lot.
I'm feeling really chilly. I'm glad we got these hot
I
chocolates.
know. Cheers.
Cheers.
Let's enjoy these hot chocolates on a cold winter's rainy day.
Right, so what are we going to talk about today?
Right. Today, I think we should talk about
Working our way up the ladder?
working up the ladder. Yeah. How tough it is. You know how many rungs there are to that ladder. Yeah, exactly. And how it can feel like it's a never-ending ladder.
Mm-hmm.
Once you've got so far, there's still so many more mountains to climb. I'm gonna break out into song here.
It really depends. It really depends on the structure and the size of the buying department, doesn't it? It's kind of, I think we've worked in a few different retailers now where like the structures are all quite different depending on like the size and the structure of that company. But we both started in a very like traditional environment, buying merch environment.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of levels there, weren't there?
Oh,
There was
God.
an entry level would be your BAA.
Yeah.
Then you become a senior BAA.
Yeah.
Then an AB.
Yeah.
Then a
senior AB.
Senior AB. Junior buyer.
Yeah.
And then a buyer.
And then some people have level 1, level 2, level 3 within each of these levels.
Yeah.
So senior buyer. Sorry, interrupted your train of thought
I
there.
did completely stop me. So right, I was after senior buyer, I was going to head of buying, so we can. But yeah, you're right. In other places, they have like levels, like AB level 1, 2, and 3, etc.
Which I think sometimes is a good thing because then you know where you are on your progression, because there are a lot of companies where the structure doesn't exist.
Yeah,
And it can be a bit sort of bewildering to know what you're working.
and also I've worked at companies where it's, it's a lot more flat than that. You've got your AB, your BA, your AB, and your buyer, and you can feel, particularly at AB level, I think, you can feel like you're stuck there for ages. At an AB level, you can feel it could be over a period of years. And when you have that sort of the structure of the senior BA before you've got to your AB, and then you've got AB and you're an established AB, and then you're a senior AB before you get to your junior buyer and your buyer, it just helps you feel like you're working towards a next bit. And I think sometimes you feel a bit more rewarded.
Yeah.
You
do.
But that said, on the other hand, if you're in a company that just goes AB to buyer, you might be sat at AB for 4 or 5 years, say.
10 years sometimes.
But you haven't had to do the jumping through hoops for each of those bits, because that was definitely one thing. It wasn't, I think some companies you can follow a development piece, and once you've achieved it, you sign it off and you're next level. Other businesses, you have to wait until that position is created.
Yeah.
Even though it's just a senior junior. You have to wait until that position is created. So I don't think any structure is like the right structure.
No, I agree.
And I think you just have to have the right attitude to whichever place you are. And I think you said it in the previous episode, like just about not judging yourself against other people. It may be.
I feel like I'm nodding, but no one knows that I'm agreeing.
In agreement.
Lindsay is nodding.
Yeah, nodding along. That you just, it very much depends on kind of where you are, but embrace that. And I also very much remember it being at kind of like that AB level and feeling like I knew everything.
Yes.
Like I knew it. I'd been a BA I've got it. I've got the groundwork done. I don't have to like maybe samples aren't my thing anymore. Like that's my BA. They do all the sample management. They raise the orders, etc. As an AB, I'm so much more involved in the buying, and I feel like I've got this. Yeah. I could do what my buyer does with my eyes closed, standing on my head.
Yeah.
But I think it can then be a sharp realisation of actually, no, they've got a lot of experience. They've been through the buying cycle, because you need to get through that buying cycle at least.
Yeah.
I'd say a couple of seasons personally. So I think
absolutely.
Anyone that, personal point of view, but I think anyone that is promoted from
newsflash, personal point of view.
Personal point of view, like don't, yeah. Anyone that is promoted from a BA to an AB within a year, I personally think that's too soon, because I don't think you've really experienced the full end-to-end cycle, because it can take that long for the product to be, for you to go from concept, strategy, design, sampling, negotiating, landing, and seeing that through the season, trading it, to then your endpoint sell through, and then starting again. And seeing that again, I think you need to see a season through a couple of times.
I think they also need to see things go wrong and how you correct them. Like you almost need to have that experience of how to correct something that's not gone to plan, that's not gone to strategy. You know,
because you're never going to
problem solvers quite a lot of the time.
Not everything's going to be a bestseller. You can't all be the best.
No. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing this job. We would have done the lottery.
Well, yeah, but also you can't, like, there's no chance not everything can be your top seller. There's always going to be a range. Do you know what I mean? They could all sell well, but you're still going to have your top 5 and your bottom 5. Yep. Like, it's not possible for everything to sell exactly the same amount.
End of,
yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So how should we talk about this then, Kate? Obviously, you start off as a BAA, and that stands for?
A buyer's admin assistant.
I feel like we're getting a bit preachy here now. Yes, a buyer's admin assistant, or it can be a BMA, buying merchandising assistant, or it can be just a BA.
Or just a buyer's assistant, exactly. But the point is, it's your entry level. It's your first step onto that buying ladder. You are very much like supporting the team. You're kind of like, you might feel like you're at the bottom, but you are so needed and so necessary. And it may be that you feel like you are overqualified to be doing the post.
Overqualified to be doing the post.
But just see it as like Santa. You know? see it as bringing people joy. You deliver the samples that everybody's been waiting for.
Yeah.
You know, that buyer has been desperately waiting for those samples to arrive on time for their sign-off, praying every day that they arrive, and suddenly you arrive with that box at their desk.
Do you remember when we always used to... And not diminishing that moment, Kate. Do you remember we always used to say, though, that you couldn't run a team without a BMA? Like, you couldn't run a team without a really, really good, enthusiastic, on the ball BMA, because they are the person that keeps the team going.
Yeah.
Keeps the team running.
Yeah.
You know?
You need to be really quite organised.
Yeah, you do.
To be a BA. You need to know where everything is. Like, being in charge of samples may sound like a very, like, light, easy job, but it's so crucial.
And complicated, especially when you've got a numerous amount of suppliers.
And a huge number of SKUs to juggle. Like, what is the best system that works for you? Like, how are you going to make sure that when your buyer needs a particular sample, you can pull that out within seconds, not being like, oh, where did I leave that? I definitely saw that on the... Did I put it in that box? Or you need a system.
Yeah, you do.
You have to have a system. You have to be well organised. You need to be able to pull it out within seconds, minutes.
And I think it's also quite funny how... I mean, this is my experience of the role... How much you remember. I thought it was really surprising how much I remembered, how many products I remembered, but I remembered them by visual.
Yeah.
You know, you just build up this visual library of all your products.
Yeah.
And some people would go as far as to remember the codes.
Yeah. I mean, test me. I know. Silver, 12. Gold, 81.
Black.
3.
Was it 3 or was it 1? What was
It
one?
was 3. Oh, I don't know. Now you're throwing me.
I feel like 1 was white.
Could have been white.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. White.
There you go. It's been a while.
It's been a while. But still, 20 years on,
Mm-hmm.
still managing to remember those codes. It's ingrained. I do remember that. They were like, oh, could you pull out the, the rah-rah necklace? I'd be like, oh, do you mean 6824321? Yes. And I go get it, and I'm like, oh my goodness,
sad.
how do you know?
You're so sad.
But after like reading the reports, like you become so accustomed with your bestsellers, and you have to be, because you pull them out for so many meetings. Like, no doubt you'll be pulling them out every week for trade.
Yeah.
If they're doing a range
we've
review.
got a funny story about that one.
Yes. Many a story about trade. You'll be, if they're doing a range review, you might be pulling them out for that. If they've got a board presentation, you might be pulling them out for that. So not only do you need to know where your sample is, but actually you need to make sure you've got multiples of them and you know where all of them are at all times.
Yeah.
Or
like
something goes missing and you're like, and then you find it on your like head of buying's desk or something, because they've just borrowed it to show the buying director or something.
Yeah.
So you have to have your wits about you. You need to have like eyes everywhere.
Yeah. Bit of second guessing in parts, I guess.
Yeah.
Of what your buyer needs.
It's understanding your buyer and your AB, and understanding how they think, how they tick, and what they would want to see, and how they'd expect to see something like racked up, for example. But if you don't know, asking as well.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a fine balance, I think, between like taking the initiative and making sure that what you're doing is right before you do all that work to then find out they didn't want it racked up. They didn't want it racked up by value. Actually, they wanted it racked up by rate of sale or something, or units. Yeah. So, but if you know your buyer well, it can just be like, well, you know that they would want to see this, or you get to a point where you just understand what they're going to be looking for, and what their taste level is as well. Like when new samples come in, sometimes it can be quite daunting because you're like, oh God, that's amazing, because you like it. But then you have to remember that actually buying, it's not necessarily about what you like. It's about what the customer
likes.
Will like.
Yeah,
so you very quickly sort of learn, no, that's not what, or it's what your buyer thinks the customer will like. Yeah. If you know what I mean.
Or even it goes in smaller companies, especially. What are your brand values? What do your brand values mean for the decisions you're making for your customer? And sticking to them, because I think a lot of companies go quite wide with their product selection and not really honing it back into what they actually are. So, Kate, question for you. I know you love me doing this. She hates it. She's just like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to say.
Suddenly quick fires at me.
What was your favourite thing about being a BMA?
I hate these things on the spot, fucking questions.
Life and death.
Yeah, my favourite thing. I think one of my things was, and this is why I'm so passionate about it, was sample management. So proud of how I'd laid things out and how neat things were. And I'd stay till like 9 p.m. just to make sure that all my samples were put away and, my whole jewellery racking looked neat and I knew where everything was. I also loved street style.
Oh, yes. I talked about this the other day with someone. I couldn't believe we used to do this. I mean, I don't know whether you do this now, but...
used to be one of our favourite things. Yeah. We used to go out and about, so whether that just be like down Oxford Street or maybe at a festival, and then on like free time on the weekends, I'd be out and you'd be taking photos of what people are wearing. I mean, often you'd be asking their permission, like, do you mind if I take a photo of what you look like, what you're wearing?
Most people quite enjoyed that, didn't they?
Yeah.
Who do you work for?
People were quite flattered, I think, because you'd be like, oh, you've got a really cool jacket, do you mind if I take a photo of it? Or I love those earrings, can I take a photo? And I loved it because it was getting out and about, speaking to people. I love people watching and outfit watching and seeing how people have like put things together. And then I also love them pulling those together and identifying trends. So what are people out there and wearing, and like, are there new trends that we can take from that?
Yeah, it's like seeing the trends live, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can pay all the money in the world to these big trend forecasting companies that are talking about future trends. They are capturing the trends here and now, but there's nothing better than going out there and sort of...
and seeing it yourself.
Finding out for yourself, yeah. And the exposure, because then we used to have to present that back to the buyers, didn't we? So the exposure that then gave you with the buyers.
Yeah, and especially when the buyers got excited about what you'd seen and would be like, oh, I love that. And you would just feel like, oh, yeah, I
found that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, that's a nice one.
Yeah, what about you? What was your favourite thing?
Oh, God, I knew you were going to do this to me.
Well, you don't throw it if you can't take it.
What was my favourite thing? Obviously, apart from working for you on boot camp. I think it was just, I think that recognition from your buyer or your AB that they couldn't do their job without you, you know. And I think that what I enjoyed the most about that was when they gave me that praise or that feedback that I'd done a really good job, I'd really helped them out, and that made their life easier. I think I really enjoyed that side of the role, really. I suppose that makes me sound like a people pleaser, really, doesn't it? But
it's having that recognition that you feel like you put in all that hard work, and it's having that reward. And it is. I think we talked about it before, didn't we? About how you know that you're good, or you're a good VA when someone doesn't want you to go on holiday.
Yes. Yeah.
When
you're going on holiday next week,
and the panic because they're like, God, how am I going to cope without you? And that's when you're like, I'm part of this.
Doing a good job here.
I'm part of this team. They need me.
Yeah.
And that's really super.
But I think it's really important to talk about praise and building someone's confidence, because I think there are a lot of companies out there that don't do that enough, and they think if they do say that, then it means that people are going to start to slack off. To the contrary, I think that made me work so much harder, because I enjoyed that feeling of making that person's job easier, because it's a hard job. Hard job.
No, definitely. I completely agree. There are some less glamorous bits around being a BA, but I have to say I didn't dislike them completely, but like order raising, and that's not the same in every company, because some companies that falls to an MA, but it's kind of like that
What's an MA?
Merchandising assistant, so similar. All of those levels generally can be mirrored on the merchandising side, so similar acronyms, but replacing buying for merchandising. And but if you're in buying and you do have to raise the orders, like, it can be probably one of the slightly more tedious aspects of it, because it's the less creative bit. But I think you get into a bit of a rhythm, and it's integral. You are raising the order, and I think that's sometimes something that gets missed. It just feels like, oh God, I've got it. It feels like data input. Yeah. But actually, you're the one that's putting in the title of the product, therefore it's going to be printed on the receipt, customer facing. The quantity that you're going to buy, oh my goodness, I remember when someone she was supposed to put in 10,000, put in 100,000.
Oh God.
And it didn't get picked up for a while. So really, once those orders are done, like, a buyer should be checking them off and checking like that PO matches and good to go. But I mean, simple fat thumb syndrome, you know?
Syndrome? I don't know.
Is that syndrome? But you know what I mean? Fat fingers or whatever. Can you even say fat fingers?
I don't
know. But basically, complete typo. Complete typo. And 100,000. And it got picked up just before they went into production. But it's an awkward conversation to then have with the supplier. And imagine if it hadn't been picked up and suddenly you think you're going 10,000, you've got 100,000 or something coming.
Yeah, you've got like
insane.
4 years cover.
Yeah, she's lucky she didn't lose her job for that. But so there's an element of raising the orders where you really are an absolute cog, as you've said, like in the team. Like, you are like making sure that this wheel goes round, that those products get ordered and that they land. But there's definitely an element of like, you have to improve your accuracy. Yeah. Like, you have to be so on it. And also, you've got to be quite quick, because when those orders come in, if they've just had a sign off and suddenly you've got to raise all those orders to make sure you hit a delivery date, you've got a short window in which to do it. So you need to raise them very quickly, but very accurately. Yeah. So that's probably one of the feels least glamorous, because you're not doing the kind of creative bit and you're not doing the presenting bit. It's not so forward facing, but actually it's integral.
Yeah, and I think we've both worked in different companies now over the last 15, 20 years. And come across quite different types of BAAs. There's a type of person that does want to develop and become a buyer, and then there's a type of BMA that's really happy about just being a BMA. But yeah. I don't mean that in a derogatory way.
BMA, which you keep saying, but some companies call it BMAs and some companies call it BAAs, don't they? And it's not necessarily just at that level as well. It could be like ABs, career ABs as well.
Yeah.
You know, you're just really happy that you've got to that level and you know what you're doing and you just want to like, that's where you
want to plateau there. And
that's your comfort zone and you enjoy doing what you're doing.
Such a big part of that team, you know. And I think...
It's so true, not everybody wants to race to the top.
Yeah, I think when I left where we first started out to move on to my next company, that's when I experienced that kind of BMA, and it was just a different way of thinking about things from where I'd come from, and it just sort of made me think about things in a different way.
Because I mean, where we both started, I think every single BA that we worked with was determined to get to the next level. Like we were all thirsty for it, weren't we?
That's a really good word, thirsty.
I mean, at the point that we kind of almost like when a role came up, I mean, you're thinking like, because you've got however many teams, and you've got at least in that company at least one BA or BAA, BMA per team at least. So you say got like 10 of us, and suddenly a senior position comes up because someone's been promoted to an AB. So one of those, so say you've got 10 BAAs and 2 seniors, and one of the seniors has been promoted to an AB. Suddenly there's an opening.
Role comes up.
And these 10 are like, it's mine. And everyone wants it. And suddenly you're like, okay, right, it's on. Game phase.
Yeah, get the gloves on.
There definitely was a level of being like, okay, well, the hierarchy at BA level at least, because your entry was very much like, well, they started in January, so therefore they're like top AB. They started in February and they didn't start till April. They started in August. I don't think they should even go for the promotion yet. You know, you had it in your mind like who were. So say out of those 10, maybe 5 would go for it, and then it would really be like you'd all be out for it, wouldn't you? You'd all be kind of like quite like working on your projects and like all trying to like compete to get that position. And this is an interesting one. I know we've had a few debates about it a few times. So like, I definitely remember like there was a time when there was someone that we saw as less qualified because of the time that they'd been there. You know, they started in the August and the rest of us started in the spring or something. And they actually got the promotion. We thought they were a complete underdog. Thought they were just going to the interview for experience.
Yeah.
And they got the promotion and they got the role. And I remember us all being quite like, and you had to handle it well because the way you responded to rejection really sort of...
It's like an award ceremony, you know, when someone else wins the award and you have to do, oh yes, well done.
Polite nod and clap and smile, and inside you're like, no. But I do remember the buyers very much saying, like, it's how you respond to rejection that then shows kind of how mature you are, I guess.
Yeah.
And how ready you are to take on the role. And I remember us feeling so frustrated. But when we then stood back and looked at it and really kind of like considered it, she had been on a team where like the circumstances had meant that she had had the opportunity to step up.
Yeah.
But it had been tough. Like her AB hadn't been in for a few weeks because she hadn't been well. Mm-hmm. And so therefore she had to step up, which was extremely stressful in that period. So although she was fortunate to be in a position where she could take on the next role, she took the opportunity and she ran with it. And she had quite a tough few months. And ultimately she deserved that promotion. But I think it's hard, but you just have to kind of sometimes like look at the bigger picture. You know, I think
you do. You have to understand that there are certain circumstances where their opportunities are on different teams, and unfortunately, it's not on your team, and therefore, it does mean that you are sort of set back a little bit.
And that's the way the cookie crumbles, and sometimes it will work for you, and sometimes it won't work for you. I think one of the other interesting things we definitely realised or understood a lot more as we've kind of progressed. And are now sort of doing a lot more sort of hiring ourselves, is sometimes it felt like they'd already decided who was going to get the role. Mm-hmm. And we were just a bit like, well, why did we even bother interviewing? But actually it was the wrong attitude to have at the time. Because actually it would be unfair just to base it on an interview when you're working with these people day in, day out, and everyone can see how you work and how you would work on their team, and like were you a good team fit, what skill set do you have to bring, does that suit what they're looking for. Actually, when it just hangs off an interview, it's a bit like exams and coursework, isn't it? Like
some people aren't good at exams, and exactly.
And actually, and coursework will show you how you can do something over a longer period of time. And I think at the time it felt a bit like, I
think there was a lot more of an inclusive way of deciding who got the next role, though.
Yeah, and I think at the time, it felt a little unfair, but I think now we definitely can see, interviews are often a formality. But it also cements that you have not just like the day-to-day ability of working and buying that they can see, but it's also like the thought process and an understanding of what's required to be a buyer of the future when you're set a project. Yeah. So they can see you've got the skill set, sort of the underlying skill set down, but actually, how do you take a project and run with it?
Yeah, exactly. I think there was one story that we discussed a while ago about your friend who seemed to be quite lucky in her career.
Oh my gosh,
which is quite unusual.
Yeah, so some of us jumped through hoops, as we said. Others could do grad schemes where you come in straight at an AB level. One of my friends, she worked for Harrods as a BA, and she was then selected for their like creme de la creme program, which is like the best of the best for all those that don't speak French. And that was essentially a fast track sort of BA to buyer. And so she skipped the AB level completely, and she had a mentor that was the buying director.
The buying director?
The buying director was her mentor. So from BA straight to buyer with a buying director as your mentor. I mean, it was amazing. So I lived with her at the time and so proud of her, but also so jealous. I was like, how? And I remember like we were still sort of, scraping by on our entry-level wage, and she'd been like promoted, and so she had this new salary. And I remember on her first paycheck, she bought herself like a silk cream Burberry trench coat.
Oh my God, some salary.
No. And we were just like, oh my God, like that's like that, like it was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, treated herself, and she'd like well deserved. But I was just like, oh my God, like, well, how are you going to wear that? How are you going to wear that to work? Like, how are you going to wear that on the tube and like on the bus, and the grubby like fingerprints of people, when you're cramming on at like Clapham Common Tube Station, like under someone's armpit, and like, how is she going to wear this beautiful coat? But hey, she's gone up in the world. She could probably get a taxi door to door. She didn't need to like scramble her way onto the tube with the rest of us.
But she was very lucky, and I think those schemes are very rare.
Really, really rare. Yeah, like I think grad schemes are a little more common.
Yeah.
But again, like they are quite competitive to get onto.
Yeah.
And if you get on a grad scheme, it can be amazing to sort of have the opportunity to work around all the different departments and then to kind of like hone in on what you want. So it's quite good if you know that you want to work in a particular sector, but you don't know what you want to do. That's what I've often found anyway. Like it hasn't been someone that's necessarily been like, I want to be a buyer. Yeah. It's been someone that's like, I want to work in retail, but I don't know what I want to do. Like, I'm not sure which sector I really want to be a part of. And then they get to try out a few different things. But then often I think they come in at AB level. That can be a bit like, oh, okay, just
snuck in there.
Yeah, don't worry about us.
Yeah.
But I think they are an amazing way for people to kind of figure out what they want to do and to get like a really good 360 view of a business.
Yeah, 100%. You get like a bit more of an insider knowledge into lots of things that you wouldn't be exposed to as BMA or BAA. So, Kate, what would you say, I'm going to throw you another question now, is the difference between a BMA and an AB?
You throw me every time because you say BMA, and I personally haven't worked in any structure where there's been a BMA. I've been in BA or BAA, so every time you say BMA, I'm just like, oh gosh, merchandising. We're talking about merchandising now. No, back to so I think when you get to the AB level, often you're you're actually a real middleman.
Yeah.
You are balancing, and actually you've got to do a lot of managing, kind of like
up and
down. Once you're an AB senior, sort of AB, you build on the basics. So you understand the life cycle of a product. You understand kind of like negotiation, or at least the basics of negotiation and range planning.
Yeah.
And you're helping to run the team.
Mm-hmm.
And you often have a lot of opportunity to put a lot of your learnings into practice. So some places you might have the chance to buy sort of your own range.
Yeah, like a small range.
Yeah, often it can be like a small kind of cash driver. But it can be really exciting to have that, and to have your sort of first opportunity to really maybe even present to like the buying director. Or it could be to take a small portion of the buying role and present it back to your buyer as kind of a case of, the range is so big, but I've taken this small section, and this is how I would go about buying it. And then it's a really good opportunity to get that feedback from your buyer. Sometimes you start to go on trips at AB level. Again, it really depends. No one should feel disheartened if they're an AB and they haven't got the opportunity to go on a trip. Sometimes it can just be because another particular buyer can't attend, or there could be multiple reasons.
Yeah, it's back to that whole luck thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like sometimes you're just
depends on the department you're on,
absolutely.
where the trip is to. Often if it's maybe like a Near East supplier, maybe it's a European supplier, then you've got more opportunity to go. It could just be it's a UK-based supplier, but you get to go out a little bit more than maybe you would as an AB, and actually see things a lot more like
showrooms, do a showroom appointment with your buyer, get to sort of see how they're thinking and how they're selecting and what they're looking for.
Yeah, and how they build those relationships with those suppliers, which is an interesting one in itself, and I'm sure, again, we'll touch on this at another time. Different relationships with different types of suppliers.
Yes.
Often cultural reasons can be like slightly different ways of how you might speak to them, negotiate with them, talk with them, information you might share with them.
Yeah.
And I think that can be a steep learning curve as well as maybe like you always enter a meeting and it's like, so how's business? Like on both sides.
Yeah.
And it's understanding what level of detail you want to give or how you might want to spin it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
and
you
also
want to gain
reading the room, kind of guiding the conversation the way you want it to be taken. All of this stuff is stuff that you just learn from experience.
Adjusting your communication style depending on who you're speaking with.
Yeah.
Be it that role or level or whatever.
So an AB is really fundamentally you're sort of stepping into the new territory of being able to have a small range to own yourself with a very, very heavy guidance from your buyer. You're shadowing your buyer, your junior buyer, on showroom appointments and learning, absorbing and understanding how conversations should flow with suppliers. And then you're ready, after a good few years, the next step, which can be in some companies junior buyer, but some companies go straight to buyer.
Yeah, and once you're a buyer, you have to think of everything.
Yeah.
The buck stops with you. Core strategy, design, store layout, how many stores it's going to, store profiling, where's it going to sit, what's the packaging like, how many are you going to buy.
You're also your training from AB comes into play here because you are also managing a whole team, but you're also managing up and down as well.
You're still managing up and down.
You're managing to your head of buying and you're managing your design team. Well, you're working very closely with your design team. You're working with your technical team. You're working with the marketing department. You're working with online. You're working with, some companies have branch merch divisions. So you're working with store allocation. And as Kate says, you're setting the strategy. It's your ideas along collectively with the merchandiser.
And they always say all roads lead to a buyer. And as you've just said, with all those, if you think all those departments are coming in, you're not necessarily managing everybody in kind of like a line manager way, but you are managing because you are the one that's created the brief, created the product, created the concept, created the idea that then everybody else needs to go out and kind of execute.
Yeah, and you've also created the supply base. You know, I think a lot of companies that I've gone into have been very fortunate to work with a really long-standing existing supply base, but some companies that we've both worked with, we've had to start that from scratch, and that's been a massive learning curve. Who do you want your partners to be, you know, from a supply base point of view? So that's a huge part of the role of being a buyer, which then kind of, once you've nailed all of that, you're really ready to be at that senior level of buying, because you have proven strategy after strategy, landed it, it's worked, you've traded it, and you've built that core team within your sector.
It can be a lot of pressure, can't it? Like,
and people stay at this level for a very long time, so all of that work gets done over a very long period of time.
Yeah. I mean, you can be buyers for 20 odd years, 30 odd years, especially when you're doing something that you love, and then you just like move around different categories or different companies and things. And I mean, you definitely being at that center point of everything, you have to. We talked about this in the last episode about like kind of the characteristics that you need, but you definitely have to, or you need to have a strong character, or you need to develop a thick skin.
Yeah,
like
sure.
We are both, to our own admission, quite emotional people with a lot of empathy. A lot of empathy, and I don't think we ever want to lose that, do we?
No.
I think we really sense an importance of team, and
and it goes back to what we were talking about before about you know, not feeling like you have to be this person that you're not.
Yeah.
You've still got to hold on to who you are.
Who you really are.
But it's about controlling certain aspects. And again, not being defensive and not taking things to heart too much, because there's a reason why your commercial director's asked you to do something. It's something to do with the wider strategy of the business. You know, it's...
You have to be an element of being a bit more pragmatic. I mean, we definitely both, I think, can admit to moments of like, it's not what you said, it's the way you said it. But ultimately, exactly, you've got to be more pragmatic about it and understand there's a bigger picture, and not be so emotionally attached to your ideas and your products and things. But I think that's definitely something that you learn.
But you learn as you get a bit more senior, as you get into senior buyer, and that's definitely what you learn when you become a head of as well, because you're not so close to the product anymore as well. So, and you have to learn how to helicopter. As one bit of advice someone once told me, which was a great bit of advice. You have to hover above and come down when you know that support's needed, and then go back up again, because you've got to allow people to get on
100%.
Run their departments.
You have to come back up from it. You need to exactly that, because you need to trust that you have employed people that are experts in their area, and you can give advice, and you can give opinions, and you can give direction, and you can give strategic direction of how the business wants to go, but you can't get involved in the nitty-gritty. I don't think once you're head of, you are relying on your team to do the groundwork, and you should be trusting in them. But that said, as a buyer, you should never really get too upset or emotional about some of the questions that your head of is asking, because you have to remember as well, they're not as close to the product as you are.
Yeah, exactly.
So their questions are completely justified.
Because they don't know the history, the story, the thought process.
And they are
the initial thought process.
Dealing with multiple buyers and multiple areas, so they do not know your category as well as you do.
Yeah. For sure. And it's good to be challenged as well. Like, you've constantly got to be challenged as a buyer. Otherwise you just become quite one level.
And become quite reliant on things. And I think that's definitely one thing you have to remember, is like, you've got bestsellers, and they're bestsellers for a reason, and your merchandisers will probably, or most likely, will just want
about
you to...
our friends the merchandisers.
Oh, friends the merchandisers,
episode.
yeah. So just to touch
love
them. To touch on them quickly. They may want you just to keep running those bestsellers because they're a sure thing.
Yeah, for sure.
But actually, you need to know as a buyer when that's run its course before it's run its course.
Yeah.
So that has been great. You could maybe get 2 seasons out of it, or you might be able to get 3 seasons out of it, or it could be a one-hit wonder.
Yeah.
You need to be able to move it on, and you need to be able to note that and to know when to do that. And you also need to understand, like, your worst sellers, why haven't they performed? And again, like we touched on this a bit before about, the colour of the season. Could it just be that you were just too early? Did you go too heavy into it? Should you just have pulled that back? But there's all these kind of things that you learn along the way.
You totally learn along the way. You're not gonna appreciate it by someone telling you that you're going to learn this along the way either, because you're just not going to know until you learn it.
Until you're there. It feels like a long way up. And I remember us all feeling like we were trying to race to the top. And it can be really, really frustrating when you want to get to the next level and you just feel like you know it. But I think that's exactly as you said before, without sounding preachy, trust the journey you're on. Yeah. but it can be. But you so often have to be performing at the next level before you get the next level. I definitely remember that. You need to be, basically you need to have the natural ability to take the next role. Mm-hmm. But you need to be able to seize the moment and the opportunities in front of you. You need to be ready and working already at that next level. So when that opportunity comes along,
you're ready for it.
You can step into it.
It's mine.
Yeah, it was mine. It was mine last year. Come on, guys. And that's the thing. You need to work hard, but often there does need to be a role available, and I think that can sometimes be the hardest thing.
It is really hard.
But do it for you. I think that's one of the biggest things we've learned is enjoy the company you work for.
Nothing's a waste of time. Even if it's gone wrong.
Yeah. You can learn from everything and you can take those skill sets wherever, you know? So a company doesn't owe you anything, it works both ways. You rub my back, I'll rub yours kind of a thing. But you need to get out of it what you want to get out of it in order to develop yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So I feel like we've jammed quite a lot into that episode. So Kate, what's our 3 takeaways from all of this?
So 3 takeaways from today's episode. 1, hard work and enthusiasm go a long way. Mm-hmm. Don't give up. Go above and beyond. Work at the next level and you will be rewarded at some point. 2, respect the experience. So knowing how long it can take to work up that ladder, the time that people have been spent, the scenarios that they've experienced, just respect that they've seen this buying cycle and they've got so many examples that they can help and support you with. So ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and just soak it all up. Learn as much as you can.
Sponge.
Yeah, and do it for you. Don't do it for anybody else. Do it for you. And number 3, is be strong and develop that thick skin. So all experiences, good and bad, will shape you for the future. And it might not always feel like it at the time, but everything molds you into the person you are today.
Love it. So, thanks so much for listening, guys. Next week, we're going to be talking about the different types of buying, own brand and branded. And we're also going to be introducing our friends' design and merchandising.
So we mentioned merchies earlier, but next week we're going to be giving a little bit more detail on exactly who they are.
Fantastic.
See you next week.
We all need a bit of retail therapy, and this is the perfect time for you to offload about that super cringeworthy story. We would love to hear from you all, your funny stories and experiences, or even any dilemmas, and maybe we can help, or at least find someone who can. And don't worry, we will keep these anonymous and remove any names and brands. We would also love to hear from you on any topics you would like us to talk about. Please send all of these into buyingandbeyond@gmail.com or drop us a DM via our Instagram page @buyingandbeyond.